I'm starting to think that Trump winning the election was actually what was best for Black women's well being. Hear me out. When Obama first got elected for his first time, I lived in a very white community. I was in high school, sophomore year to be exact. And that day, I walked into my predominantly white school, and I immediately, before I spoke to anyone, I called my mom and I said, "You're going to want to come up to the school." I rode the bus to school that day. I said, "You're going to want to come to school and see what I'm seeing." My mom got there and saw how those white kids who I went to elementary school and middle school were looking at me. The parents were in the lobby of the high school. People were crying. There were prayer circles. I immediately became like enemy of the state simply for my proximity to these white folks, and their internal anger and hatred was going to be taken out on me. And both me and my mom, without a single word spoken to these kids or their parents, understood that. I immediately was transferred out of that school that day, the very day that Obama was elected for his first term. And thinking about what it would mean for us as Black women if Kamala was elected, knowing the internal hatred that these white folks have for Black people, and more specifically for Black women. Obama was one thing, but for a Black woman to be president, our proximity to them would be so uncomfortable. So much of that internalized misogynoir, hatred, ignorance they would take that out on us in our professional spaces, and, how we work with them, and, how we're treated when we go into places. I love nothing more than seeing all these Black homemakers and Black women resting and leaning into community. And I think that even though politically speaking, yes, Kamala would have been the better choice for us all, but for Black women specifically, being able to fall back and say, "This is y'all's mess. Enjoy it. Y'all go out and march. We're at home. We're making bread. We're starting podcasts. We're raising kids." I think that this was the answer to the soft life we've actually been praying for.
Join me as I dive into the tough questions of whether Blacks are really safer under Trump. I'll be sharing some surprising stats along the way. The question is whether Black Americans felt safer during Trump's presidency, or whether the Black Americans feel safe under a white president compared to different previous administration. So this topic is a complex one with many factors to consider. So first, I want us to watch a very short clip of a lady here who thinks, or who narrates her experience during Donald Trump's current administration, and when Barack Obama, the Black president at that time, was a president. So she's saying, when Obama was declared the president, she went to her school, and there were groups now, like the whites, they were looking like, look at this Black now. I think you feel you are very supreme. So I think it's giving a racism vibe, So according to this lady, is that Blacks feel safer living under the radar than being actually up there. So she feels that Trump's winning is the best thing for the well-being of Black women, or Blacks in general. So this, may feel like Blacks wants to put themselves down, and allow white supremacies. But it's her according to her opinion. So I have some facts which I've actually put together that will give an insight if this is really a great idea. So let's keep watching. And
the very day that Obama was elected for his first term, and thinking about what it would mean for us as Black women if Kamala was elected, knowing the internal hatred that these white folks have for black people, and more specifically for black women, Obama was one thing. But for a black woman to be president, our proximity to them would be so uncomfortable. So much of that internalized misogynoir, hatred, ignorance they would take that out on us in our professional spaces, and, how we work with them, and, how we're treated when we go into places. I love nothing more than seeing all these black homemakers and black women resting and leaning into community. And I think that even though politically speaking, yes, Kamala would have been the better choice for us all, but for black women specifically, being able to fall back and say, this is y'all's mess, enjoy it. Y'all go out and march. We're at home. We're making bread. We're starting podcasts. We're raising kids. I think that this was the answer to the soft life we've actually been praying for.
So, as many of you may be, we needed a Kamala to win, we needed this and this, we needed a black president. These ones feel like it was the best thing for Trump's presidency, for a very black woman. The narrative around safety and economic progress of black Americans during Trump's term is multifaceted, with supporters arguing that his policies led to a period of unprecedented economic growth and low unemployment rate for African Americans. Critics, on the other hand, argue that Trump's policy exacerbated existing racial tensions and did little address the system inequalities faced by black Americans. Trump supporters point to his administration's effort to increase funding for historically black colleges and universities, as well as his push to reform criminal justice system. However, critics argue that these efforts were often overshadowed by Trump's divisive rhetoric and policies that disproportionately affect communities of color. The whole idea is, now this was during Trump's first time in office. So we all know this time is all centered about making America great again, but is it safe for American blacks? So give us a comment of what you think. Is blacks safer under the current administrations, or is the black woman's well-being, mental well-being, they are safer under this administration? So many black Americans felt that Trump's presidency was marked by a rise in hate crimes and racial tensions, which made them feel less safe. The Trump administration's response to these incidents were often criticized for being inadequate or tone deaf. Despite this criticism, some black Americans did see improvements in their economic situations during Trump's previous term, with lower unemployment rates and increased access to capital for black-owned business. However, these gains were often unevenly distributed, with many black Americans continuing to face significant economic challenges. So I want to know, how are the blacks now? How are the black farms feeling? How is the economy? How is the black community feeling now around this? So the data on crime statistics and economic indicators during Trump's term is mixed, with some areas showing improvement and others showing decline. While the overall crime rate decreased, these were still significant disparities in how different communities were affected by crime. Economic indicators such as unemployment rates and median income also showed improvement, but the pace of progress was slow and uneven. Looking at the data, it's clear that the experience of black Americans during Trump's term was complex. Some communities saw significant improvements in their economic situations, while others continue to face significant challenges. The rise in hate crimes and racial tension during this period also had a profound impact on how safe many black Americans felt. To understand the full picture, it's essential to consider both economic data and the social and cultural context in which black Americans were living. The impact of Trump's policies on black safety and security were often indirected by but still significant. For example, his administration effort to roll back certain civil rights protection and environmental regulations had disproportionate impact on communities of color. At the same time, some of his economic policies such as the Tax Cut and Jobs Act did lead to increased investment in certain black communities. However, these gains were often outweighed by the negative consequences of other policies, such as a travel ban and tolerance to immigration policies. The most significant finding from this analysis is the experience of black Americans during Trump's term was highly dependent on the individual circumstances and the community in which they lived. While some saw significant improvement in their economic situations, others faced increased racial tensions and decreased feelings of safety. To fully understand the impact of Trump's policies, it's essential to consider the complex interplay between economic, social, and cultural factors. So, if you wanted to feel safe, it depended on it. The main determining factor was the community you're living in. If you live in a community where I think they experience, there are more racism than love, you have a bad experience. So, in conclusion, the question of whether black Americans were safer under Trump is a complex one. With no easy answers, the data and narratives around this topic are multifaceted, and it's essential to consider both economic and social context in which black Americans were living this period. So the complexity of safety and economic conditions for black Americans under Trump are clear. And it's up to us to continue the conversation and push for more a nuanced understanding of these issues. If you got thoughts on this topic, be sure to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to check out the next video.